Assalamu alaikum. How are you?
Hello, good morning, and a very Merry Christmas to all of you.
And very Merry Christmas to you as well.
Thank
Thank
you
you so much
Thank
for
you.
being here today.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to get started with the conversation. I'll start with you, Dr. Ilhan. Relevance of Quaid-e-Azam Day to the nation in 2017.
Well, it's very interesting because if you look at Jinnah's life and career, and if you look at his views on a wide range of issues, whether we talk about governance, whether we talk about the economy, whether we talk about women's rights, whether we talk about the importance of civil liberties, human rights, whether we talk about the need for having tolerance in a society, whether we look at constitutional development or legal issues, etc. Jinnah left behind such a great corpus of work, and his long career in public service saw him participate in so many of the great issues of that basically almost half a century. But the interesting thing is, which I found is that when it comes to independence, when it comes to after 1947, we are very happy to celebrate or to commemorate the Quaid-e-Azam, but there is very little serious engagement with his actual views on substantive issues. And I think that has something to do with the fact that Pakistan's evolution since its independence has diverted so much from what Jinnah would have wanted, from what he wrote about, from what he stood for, that it's actually quite embarrassing for any regime or any government to actually ask that, well, you know, let's go back and let's actually study what he said, let's actually study what he did. So in that sense, we like to idealize him, we like to mark him out. He's a very important figure in the historical backdrop. People often like to claim that we would like to create Jinnah's Pakistan, different political parties, you know, everybody says it. But they don't really seem to understand that Jinnah's Pakistan, the kind of polity that he struggled for, both during British imperial rule and then as the Governor General of Pakistan, though that was a very brief period, was not what actually subsequent leaders thought necessary or desirable to follow. So I think this is an important thing that when you look at other great countries like Turkey or China, etc., one thing that you notice is that very often their foundational leader, even in the United States, you have a cult of the founding fathers, the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists, etc. But in Pakistan, we don't seem to have engaged with Jinnah intellectually. We sort of gloss over his views, his substantive insights, his political career, etc. So, I mean, for instance, you mentioned various stages in his career and referenced the 1916 Lucknow Pact, which basically could have served as the basis for a constitution for a united India had the Congress not later turned its back on its recommendations. The basic principle of that pact was that for democracy to work in South Asia, you essentially need to over-represent minorities wherever they happen to be. And that is necessary in order to ensure that the communal majorities that will inevitably exist in a democratic state do not override or overrule the religious sentiments and the social and economic interests of different minority groups in that society. But, you know, since independence, both India and Pakistan have moved towards a kind of communal majoritarianism, chauvinism, sort of neglect of the fact that they are diverse societies and they need to celebrate that diversity rather than trying to cover it up or ignoring it, or in worst cases, even suppressing it.
Exactly. I'll just move on to Dr. Saab over here, since you're a psychiatrist. So over here in Pakistan, we have this trend of, you know, putting up Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah's picture almost in every office, you know, wherever you go. So, for example, I think that the picture is obviously there to symbolize that what he did for us. But why do you think that over the years we've lost the impact of his teachings?
I think that is probably true for everything. Um, you look at any faith and you see huge divergence. You have the symbol, but then the divergence.
Yeah.
And the originator of the faith will probably not recognize the shape that the faith currently is. Similarly, with Quaid-e-Azam, he is the symbol. He is probably the only possible symbol for this country. And what he stood for was exactly what we are talking about, but have not been able to achieve, as Ilhan very rightly put. We have diverged from him hugely, but the symbolism is still very important. Now, why did he resonate?
Yeah.
Because that was exactly what people wanted. So if he wanted freedoms for all, freedoms for minorities, freedom for the majority, and the egalitarian, free, sort of society which looked after everybody, that is what the Muslims of the subcontinent wanted. Minorities of the subcontinent wanted. Now, we must actually also understand and put ourselves back in that era.
Yeah.
We were the minority, right? And what did he say? That we will be moving away from the rule of the British to the rule of the Brahmin or the Hindu. And what he said was that because we are so different, that is why we must separate, right? Now, if we apply that principle, now there's a very dangerous principle if it keeps on getting applied, more and more and more. So all unities will then, fragment. But the point is that the principle is valid.
Okay.
Pakistan was created that minority must not be, the Muslim minority must not be suppressed.
Yeah.
So when Pakistani Muslims are in a majority, what should they do?
Okay.
That is the point. That is the question. And we need to actually revisit Jinnah, as Dr. Saab said, that we have not really engaged with Jinnah. And when you do not create, when you do not engage with the creator, and then we do not have a dialogue with your creator of the country, then that's where you go astray. And that engagement is necessary. That what would Quaid-e-Azam do for Pakistan at this particular moment?
I think that's a great question. We'll have to come back to Dr. Ilhan, but I just wanted to move on to Albert over here.
Yes.
And that is that, since you very correctly mentioned that back then we were a minority.
Exactly.
Now we are a majority,
Exactly.
and then we do have minorities within the country. And we over here live as Pakistanis without any label, without any ethnicity or caste or creed or whatnot. So how do you relate to Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah as the founder of your country too?
Okay. I mean, to start with, I'm thankful to both the doctors for your putting up that, saying the things which I wanted to say, the underrepresented, yes, two separate religions, and sort of they wanted a separate country. But on the other hand, when we look at Quaid-e-Azam, for me, Quaid-e-Azam was more than a leader. For me, Quaid-e-Azam was a visionary, right? But the thing is, I'm afraid that we've not been able to carry on that vision, right? We do talk a lot about Quaid-e-Azam's speech of 11th August, right?
Yes.
And we talk about it on every occasion. But I think we need to move a bit further now. I think we need to start applying that. We talk about it, but we don't really apply. The narrative that Quaid-e-Azam gave on 11th of August 1947, I think we should now start applying that narrative. And Pakistan needs it. Not only for different religions, I think as a whole nation, we need it. I mean, Dr. very rightly said, I mean, we are a country which is so rich in diversity, but unfortunately, we are not celebrating that diversity.
Okay.
I mean, we are not even respecting that diversity, and I think that is now is the time that we start doing that. We start celebrating our diversity, we start respecting each other, and we start respecting each other's point of view. Yes, let's start applying Quaid-e-Azam's narrative.
Okay, so now in regards to this, we're talking about the essence and the work that Quaid-e-Azam did. Dr. Ilhan, I know.
It's all right.
So Dr.
Just
Ilhan,
helping.
thank you very much.
Let's celebrate diversity.
He's so scared, I'm going to get it wrong. No, so Dr. Ilhan, we're talking about, we were the minority back then, and it's not just when we look across the board, when you look at the way politics, the way societies are going, there's a lack of tolerance, lack of respect. We're seeing, this is a universal, I feel, phenomena, especially with the age of social media. But now, how do we start to realize the true essence of it? Where do we need to start teaching these things? Because you have lots of information on the internet, yet people are not reading this information. You're in the era of information technology, but we're still unable to connect with the essence and the teachings from back then. How do we start learning about this?
Well, you are right about social media in the sense that these days people do read a lot,
Yes.
but they basically read about what everybody's having for lunch at a particular time,
Yeah.
rather than reading anything substantive or serious. And I think that really is the problem. As an academic, I deal with this issue on a daily basis, that how do you communicate? And Jinnah's views are so complex and so nuanced and so well grounded in the legal traditions of that period, that how do you take that and then actually communicate it to a mass audience? How do you take those ideas about representation, constitutionalism, civilian supremacy, rule of law, human rights, etc., as he understood them in that period, and which are still far advanced of our contemporary reality, and communicate them to a larger audience. Then, of course, you also lead to another problem, that when you honestly engage with his views, you will immediately run into opposition from constituencies within Pakistan today, who, while they are happy to celebrate Jinnah as a symbol, would be very uncomfortable with his ideas in practice.
Yes.
You can take women's rights as an example of this. Jinnah wrote about this topic extensively. He wrote to leaders about it. He spoke about it. His own sister was a prominent leader in the movement, Fatima Jinnah Sahiba. And Muslim women played a very critical role in the mobilization of public opinion and support in the British Indian Punjab. There's a wonderful book on this by Dr. Dushka Sayyid titled Muslim Women of the British Punjab, which is all about how women basically came out of their homes and got involved in politics and played a critical role in the Pakistan movement. But of course, if you were to talk about women's emancipation, if you were to talk about women having equal rights even, a lot of people would say that, no, this is against our traditions, this is against our patriarchal norms, this is against our values, you are promoting westernization, you're doing this, you're doing that. In a like manner, Jinnah was a very, very firm and uncompromising advocate of civilian supremacy. As Governor General, he actually reminded military officers of their oath to the Constitution and Dominion of Pakistan. And he was very clear that basically all policy making is vested in the hands of the civilian leadership. And the military's job is not to reason why, it is basically to do or die. But again, we see that since independence, because of various circumstances, the military intervened in politics and in policy making. Then you can look at his views about the sovereignty of parliament. We often refer to the August 11th speech, and of course in that speech he makes very important remarks about the need for religious tolerance and equality of citizenship. But the first part of that speech is that he tells the Constituent Assembly that you are the sovereign body. And as the sovereign body, you have two functions, which is, of course, to draft a constitution for Pakistan, and then to act as the federal legislature until such time as that constitution is drafted. And even today, you see that your political parties, etc., they are struggling for sovereignty of parliament. So again, I would basically say that on a lot of issues, the way our state, the way our society has evolved, we've created very powerful structures which would actually resist trying to implement Jinnah's vision, even while paying lip service to him as a great leader and as a great organizer of the Muslims of South Asia.
That's what I wanted to connect to as well. Now, Dr. Saab, this one's for you once again. I'm sorry for that, because we have got a larger house over here. You know, we have got our political parties. We see people wearing Jinnah cap too as well, or probably want to dress up like them. And since Dr. Ilhan mentioned about civil supremacy, but I think one way or the other, please don't take me wrong as well, that we haven't really practiced civil supremacy as well. And this is where we have lost on Jinnah's footsteps, or for all of those leaders who are out there. How do you think we can bring them back to that point?
The point is that civil supremacy is absolutely right, but it needs to have the right direction. You can have civil supremacy which can be apartheid-like. You can have civil supremacy where you can have suppression of women, suppression of minorities, in the garb of democracy and civil supremacy. So what you need to do is first determine the direction. So we need to determine that Jinnah's direction was the right direction. The direction that was the need and requirement then and now and since of the nation that he created with the support of Muslims and minorities at that time.
Exactly.
So if we first agree, and then as Dr. Saab said, do we know what that direction is? So the direction is his work on civil liberties, his work on minorities, his opinions on women's rights, his opinion on how nation state should function, what the roles of each institution should be. So once we engage with that, once that becomes part of your syllabus, because without that, when you said, so after having determined the direction, then the process how? What Dr. Saab teaches about Quaid, but he's teaching in that institution which is postgraduate and so on.
Yeah.
But this actually needs to be taught to the 5-year-old, to the 7-year-old, to the 10-year-old. And Dr. Saab should be writing now, I'm challenging you, to write those children's books that should be spread all across this country.
Exactly.
This is what Jinnah said. And once you determine, once that education of Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, the most ardent and the greatest Muslim leader in the history of Islam in a way, who created a nation state for Muslims. And virtually, as you said, about visionary, that is exactly the point. He could see where the pieces on the chessboard of the world were being set. And he said, this is the strategy that we must have, that Pakistan will be brought about. And he succeeded single-handedly.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Amazing.
And how many people can create a nation for minorities who are, being suppressed and persecuted, which is amazing. And we need to have
But very
be true
quickly,
to the
I
idea.
just want to move on to Mr.
Yes,
Albert
please
over here
do.
as well, because we have to wrap up this segment, and then
Yes.
we've got something very special, a band for the next segment too as well. So anything which you want to close up this segment with, anything which you want to share.
I think two things. Number one, let's not forget what happened in Quetta last Sunday, and it has actually overshadowed Christmas this year, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But on the other hand, we have to stress on the real message of Christmas too, because the message of Christmas is sacrifice, right? And it starts from Jesus. Sort of, it is sacrifice, it is love, and I think we need to spread that message across. But on the other hand, we don't have to be afraid of what is happening. And again, sort of that is the message of Christmas. The angel brought 3 very important messages: one to Mary, one to Joseph, and one to the the shepherds. And in all three messages, what he said is, don't be afraid.
Yeah.
Right, and
we're
that
not.
is and that is, I think, what we need to. We are not afraid of anyone. I mean, Pakistan is there to survive, and Pakistan will survive. But I think we have to go back to Quaid-e-Azam's narrative. I think democracy. Everyone talks about democracy. We just don't need democracy. We need a inclusive democracy where everyone is included.
Absolutely.
Right? I mean, Dr. mentioned about representation. I mean, just see. In 1985, we were given 10 seats in parliament. 2017, we still have 10 seats in parliament. In all these years, our population hasn't increased. So, I mean, these are the small things which the state now has to do to make everyone feel inclusive as Pakistani citizens.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, and thank you so much for being here today on such an
Thank you.
important day. And at the end of the day, it's about uniting as civilians, as human beings, to make sure that everyone's rights are being heard. Everyone has the same, access to justice, health, education, and we need to also get the right message out there. Stop listening to what other people tell you. Do your own research. You all have internet. You all have critical thinking. You have brains. Use them, and let's start the new year where we're all united. And without these tragedies, one life lost, no matter what religion, whatever background, it's a stain on all of our souls because we're all guilty.
And it definitely starts from setting an example, and that's what we are doing at World this morning on PT
Fine.
World as well. This is why we try to have a full representation of each and every nook and corner of the country as well. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Let's get you into a celebration mode as well. Let's take a break. Good morning.
Welcome back, everyone. And before the break, we were observing Quaid-e-Azam Day, and we were discussing the relevance of it today, where we are lacking, how we can go forward. And it was a wonderful conversation. I definitely learned a lot. And also, we are also observing Christmas as well, because we know people are celebrating. But Shahzad and I, and from the whole team of World this morning, and from PTV World, would like to pay our condolences to all the lives that were lost and all the families that are without their loved ones this Christmas and on Quaid-e-Azam.
Exactly, and all of those martyrs, all of those people who've actually lost their life in that incident, our prayers go out to them, and we definitely think about you guys, and for all of those people going to miss out on their kids too. Imagine us being your kids too, and we are always going to be there.
Exactly, but now we've been joined by some wonderful people in the studio to celebrate Christmas as well, and also obviously with the heavy heart, but we must go forward and we must unite and we must keep celebrating because we are not afraid, as Albert said. So now, Shahzad, we're going to share our introduction. So on my right-hand side, we've been joined by Decision, the band. Omer Shahid is the vocalist from the band. Assalamu alaikum, Merry Christmas. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for joining us. Alongside Mr. Omer, we have been joined by Thekla Trinity Villa, who is the vocalist of the band too. Hello, Merry Christmas. How are you?
Merry Christmas. I'm fine. How are you?
Absolutely perfect. Thank you very much for joining us.
And besides
welcome.
Thekla, we've been joined by Javad Chaudhary. He is the guitarist for Decision, the band. Assalamu alaikum. Merry
Hello,
Christmas.
hello.
Thank you very much for
Well,
joining us.
thank you
He's
very
a very
much
naughty
for
guy.
inviting
Doesn't
us
share his
over here.
guitar too.
Yeah.
It's good.
I knew that would come out on air, but anyway. And then finally, we have been joined by...
A moose. Yeah. And he's a percussionist.
Yes, absolutely.
Hello, Amoose. How are you?
Hello.
You're
I'm
way
fine,
too
and
far
you?
behind, but it's perfectly all right.
Yeah.
Would you mind naming this device as well? Because one of my friends plays it too, but I don't remember the name.
Cajon. It's called
Cajon. Yeah.
Excellent.
Exactly.
Okay, excellent. So now, before we get you guys to perform for us, just tell us a little bit about your band, Javad.
Well, this band is actually the name Decision is actually when we decided that we have to make our own band and we need to come up with the screen, or maybe we should do something that this is something when we we were unable to decide the name.
So decision.
Decision is the name when we come up with.
There was
the
this one
Fasla.
line which you wanted to use about the band: when there is no hope.
Yeah, when you have nothing to do, when you have nothing else to do in the world, when you have nothing to decide, there is only one hope, and that is music.
Oh, wonderful.
And that's something which you need to decide too as well, and that's why we've got decision over here. So first of all, we're going to pay rich tribute to Qaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, and then we're going to sing a
Carol. as well. So first we'll start with the national song that you guys have picked as well.
Sure.
Sure. तंजीम इत्तेहादीमा कायद का पैगाम तंजीम इत्तेहादीमा जब्र सब्र इंतहा तारो गैब का निशान जानता है सारा जहां जुनून से और इश्क से मिलती है आजादी जुनून से और इश्क से मिलती है आजादी कुर्बानी की बाहों में मिलती है आजादी जुनून से और इश्क से मिलती है आजादी तौहीद इत्तेहाद मीज़ान मोमिन की पहचान तौहीद इत्तेहाद मीज़ान जब्र सब्र इंतहा कायरो गैब का निशान सरज़मीन Beautiful, that was wonderful, fantabulous. I so wanted to use this word, it's been ages I haven't
I
used
know,
this word.
you know, the other day I almost used this word. And I was like, oh, I miss Shazad. And I was like, oh, the show was fantabulous. I was like, no, Maha, it's not a word, don't say it.
No, it's perfectly alright, but right now, ladies and gentlemen, obviously we're going to sing a carol, but before that we have to wrap up the show as well. So Maha, you want to say something?
Yes, what I want to say is that, you know, we've had lots of ups and downs this year, but the important thing is that we came out at the other end and we understand, you know, where our shortcomings are, where we need to work on. We're not ignorant to it anymore. There's enough people holding up a mirror for us to fix ourselves. So let's try, you know, start the new year with positivity and unitedness. Let's unite, guys. That's my
And we'll
message.
definitely talk about New Year resolutions too, but I think we've got a few more days to talk
But you're
about
going to
it.
start the New Year's shows without me.
Oh, well, you know, it was certainly your decision to go on a vacation, but it's a perfect time to go for a vacation
It's
too.
not vacation. I have to see family. It's different.
No, but still, you know, you're going
No,
to
'cause
have
you're going
fun.
home, yeah.
But we're going to miss you over here. Obviously, the
But I
entire
will be here
team,
tomorrow
the entire
as well.
crew is going to, obviously, we are going to miss you. But other than that, ladies and gentlemen, if there's anything you want to talk about or ask us, please write to us on our Facebook fan page, which is with the name of
Well This Morning.
on Twitter,
Well This Morning without a G.
on Daily Motion in YouTube,
Well This Morning.
and the fabulous repeat's going to be at
11:05 p.m., 11 p.m. in the evening. Have a wonderful day. Be good, be safe. Merry Christmas.
and be back soon.
Happy Qaid-e-Azam Day. Yes, and you'll see me tomorrow anyway. That's the last day, but I'll see you very soon.
So let's do it. What are we doing?
A carol. Which carol?
गीत अपने मसीहा के गाएं, आओ मिलके बड़ा दिन मनाएं, आओ मिलके बड़ा दिन मनाएं, आओ मिलके बड़ा दिन मनाएं, गीत अपने मसीहा के गाएं, आओ मिलके बड़ा दिन मनाएं। उसका पैगाम है रास्ते का, उसका पैगाम है जिंदगी का, उसका पैगाम है रास्ते का, उसका पैगाम है जिंदगी का, उसका पैगाम सबको सुनाए, आओ मिलके बड़ा दिन मनाए, उसका पैगाम सबको सुनाए, आओ मिलके बड़ा दिन मनाए, गीत अपने मसीहा के गाएं, आओ मिलके बड़ा दिन मनाए। जिनसे झगड़े सुलह उनसे कर ले, दामने दिल को खुशियों से भर ले, जिनसे झगड़े सुलह उनसे कर ले, दामने दिल को खुशियों से भर ले, आज रूठे हुओं को मनाए, आओ मिलके बड़ा दिन मनाए, गीत अपने मसीहा के गाएं, आओ मिलके बड़ा दिन मनाए, 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 आओ मिलके बड़ा दिन मनाए।
Beautiful. Thank you very
Thank you
much for
so
being
much.
with us. Merry Christmas, ladies and gentlemen. Happy Qaid-e-Azam Day.